I have a video this week, and this week we are looking at a film. We're not looking at a silent film, but it is black and white, so there you go. I have been writing, and it's been a long time since I wrote a novel, and I forgot how consuming they are, and I've been having trouble reading outside of the novel that I'm writing at the moment, so we haven't got a lot of books on the go at the moment, so bear with, but we have got a video. Last time I was writing a novel, I was not I wasn't doing YouTube, and I had more time. And so this is it's a bit different because of that. But anyway, I do have a film for you. So before we get to our film, remember, if you want to support us, there is our shop where we have books and writing services. There is also our Redbubble shop where we have over 100 designs. So if you want to support us, you can support us there. If you want to support us without spending any money, like, subscribe, comment, and share. So those are all good ways to support us. So we're doing film. What film are we talking about? Well, everyone has had sort of a theme running through lately, the past few videos. We're talking about Alice in Wonderland 1966, which you might remember, well, if you watched it, because I don't know that many people watched it, but it was one of the things that I found and watched when I was sick. So I thought I would talk about this. So in 1966, Jonathan Miller, the director, working with the BBC, decided to make a version of Alice in Wonderland. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long, and it is Alice in Wonderland. But he wanted Alice in Wonderland aimed towards adults. Now, this caused a bit of consternation when that came out, because people assumed that it was for adults, like a porno. And it's like, seriously, you think the BBC is going to commission a porno? Okay, you're crazy. But anyway, so it has this sort of, it gained this sort of funny reputation. But what it is a really interesting meditation of Alice in Wonderland. Now, Alice in Wonderland was not one of my childhood stories. I don't think I actually ever saw a version of Alice in Wonderland till I was in my teens. I grew up in the 1980s. Disney basically had all its stuff locked in a vault, and all you ever saw was a few clips with music videos over the top. That was really Disney. I mean, I look at Disney adults and think, are you okay? Because this was not part of my childhood. My childhood was Muppets, and they're snarky and sarcastic and strange. So my childhood was definitely not so cute. So the first time I saw Alice in Wonderland was the Disney version, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. It's like, okay. And then I saw the newer Disney version, the live action, where they try to cram a narrative in there. Oh, is that bad? Oh, is that bad? That is so bad. But my contact with Alice in Wonderland is really sparse. I've never read it, but what I have read is The Hunting of the Snark. and I've read The Hunting of the Snark because I have the album of The Hunting of the Snark, which has Julian Lennon and Roger Daltrey and John Hurt and Sir John Gielgud as narrators, and a whole load of other really great musicians doing the Hunting of the Snark, which is very funny, and I really enjoyed that. So it's not that I didn't know what Dodson's writing was like. It's just that Alice was never one of my childhood things. My childhood things are Muppets and Superman and Star Wars and Wind in the Willows. So I got little Edwardian animals, kind of freaky Muppets, and science fiction. You know, plus I'm also of a generation whose parents let you can watch Blazing Saddles. Yeah, because that's not inappropriate for children. So really, Alice in Wonderland has not been high on the list of things that it's like, oh yes, I want to watch Alice in Wonderland. Partly I have an aversion to things with children in. I'm not a fan of that at all, really, unless they're like, you know, like child protagonists. I find kind of like, oh goody, we get to misunderstand everything. So yeah, I do find that kind of a something that is off-putting. I know most children's stuff has children, but again, I draw you to, I grew up in the 80s. And that list of stuff that was big for me didn't have children in. You know, there were no children walking around with the Skeksis and the Gelflings. They're not children, they're adults. So children is like, okay, so it's sort of this weird roly-poly story with a little girl who follows a white rabbit down a hole and ends up in Wonderland and meets a bunch of people. So it never appealed to me. This one, Alice in Wonderland 1966, is really different. It's really, really different. So what makes it different? It's black and white. And it's black and white, and the cinematography has been the lighting and the cinematography have been made so that they are more like mid-19th century photography. Uses a lot of very wide lenses, has really deep focus. So you've got things in the foreground and things in the background in focus. So you've got this really... What is actually really lush, like putting that in color with the way that they've actually shot it would actually become somewhat distracting. I saw some color photos from it, but I think it would lose something with that, which is a really interesting sort of thing. So it has this very mid-19th century, deliberately mid-19th century look to it. It has taken all the animal heads, animal costumes off the characters. And Jonathan Miller did this for two different reasons. One, you don't hire Peter Sellers and stick an animal head on him. You don't hire Sir John Gielgud and stick an animal head on him. You don't hire Peter Cook and stick an animal head on him. Not that he would have got an animal head on him anyway, because he's the Mad Hatter. You don't hire Michael Redgraves and stick an animal head on him. Or Leo McKern and stick an animal head on him. Or Michael Gough and stick an animal head on him. It has the most amazing cast. Just a really amazing cast. So instead of sticking animal heads on them, what he did was cast them all in mid-Victorian. They look like mid-Victorian members of a big university like Oxford. They're all there. dressed in the same sort of clothing that middle class to upper class people would dress. And they're also, the other thing, keeping in mind that Oxford or Cambridge sort of, I think Dodson was at Oxford, but that university setting, it allows for a lot of the eccentricity. So while they are mid-19th century, there is also a level of eccentricity about all of these adults. They are all a little bit unusual. The other reason why it's set like this is that Jonathan Miller's concept behind this was, this is a meditation on childhood. And that this girl, Alice, who is a little older than she would be in the book because he happened to cast a complete unknown who happened to be about 13. This complete unknown who plays Alice is very impassive, which I did notice when I saw people talk about this. That seems to be this big criticism that people have, is that Alice is really impassive. But Jonathan Miller says, and I rather agree in terms of how this works, you don't have you are fairly impassive in a dream. She's not meant to be engaging and back and forwarding. She is watching this. She is an observer. She's not, these are not adventures in Wonderland. This is Alice in Wonderland. But what is Wonderland? What is Wonderland is the world of adults from a child's perspective. When you think about what does the world of adults look like from a child's perspective, and you think back to what it was like. You are of an unstable size. You are both too big and too little. Some places you're too big. Some places you're still too little as a child. Especially if you go to relatives' houses that you haven't been to for a long time. So one set of my grandparents lived locally and the other set lived up the coast, and we only saw them about once a year. So every single time you went to their house, everything was slightly different. It was the same, but you were slightly larger. Everything got slightly smaller. What had seemed a big house got littler and littler and littler as you grew. So that is a real experience for children, is that, you know, they are constantly being told, you're too big for that, you're too little for that, you're too big for that, you're too little to do that, you're too old to do that, you're too young to do that. That is a real experience of childhood. And then there are all the characters that Alice meets. And we start out with Wilfrid Bramble's wonderful White Rabbit, who really he actually is quite rabbity. His rabbitiness is more suggested than it is, you know, a rabbit head on him. He's got mustache and whiskers, side whiskers that are quite rabbity, but his movement is quite alert and twitchy. He's a very tightly wound man, and he's a very important man. He's a man who attends the court. So he has his beautiful uniform. There is no I'm late. There is no franticness in Bramble's White Rabbit. He is just he's very tightly wound. Leo McKern is the ugly Duchess, who is both a somewhat threatening character when we first meet the Ugly Duchess with the pepper cook in the house, but also there is something very, when we get to the Queen of Hearts garden party, very protective and very very defiant about the Ugly Duchess. It's like, oh, this is actually a person who is potentially an ally, because the Ugly Duchess and the Queen of Hearts do not get along. And there is really quite a defiance in that. And as a child, you do sometimes find, especially in families, you know, there's that prickly aunt that doesn't get along with your mother. And you find, oh, here's an ally when I don't get along with my mother. Here is someone who they might be a little bit initially, you know, we've all met adults who are not particularly child-friendly adults. But they can sometimes, for a child, be the person that they need, the person who shows them, oh, actually, as much as my mother, because the King and Queen of Hearts are really clearly Alice's mother and father, my mother is having a one of her things. I have other allies within the family who I might just see that we don't have to just defer to the Queen of Hearts because she's threatening to cut off everybody's head. And that is an important thing that children start to learn. We see a lot of these characters look like very peculiar academic people who are talking to Alice, but they're the kinds of people who really don't have an awful lot of contact with children, and so they speak to her with very little regard to her being a child. They just speak to her, and they are all quite different. The caterpillar is not like the griffin is not like the mock turtle. They have their own peculiarities, and to a child it's always interesting when you meet different people, because adults look like they have everything together, or at least they should. You as a child, you want to be in a position where the adults look like they have everything together, because that is what keeps you safe. So that's an important element of being a child, is being able to look to adults and say, oh, you've got everything together. But all these different creatures are all very they all have their unique eccentricities, and it's, when you're a child, you're trying to work out how do you do this? How do you get everything together? And seeing adults who are, they're together, but there is no one singular way to be an adult, is a really interesting and important thing for children to see. And Alice doesn't treat any of these adults poorly. She's not disrespectful of any of them, but they are all very curious to her. Their self-contained quality is something that Alice has to observe as she will, in time, grow to be an adult herself. She's already watching. We see at the framing of the film, we see Alice and her elder sister. And in Wonderland, we discover there is also an elder brother. Alice is watching her siblings growing up and changing and entering this world. Her brother has already entered this world. He's the Knave of Tarts. He is now an adult. He is now part of the world of Wonderland. Wonderland is adulthood. And it's confusing, and it's vaguely threatening, and it's not somewhere that for a child you necessarily want to have to stay in all the time, because we don't expect children to stay in an adult world all the time. She's visiting, she leaves. And that brings me to the tea party with the Hatter and the Dormouse and the March Hare. And I think that one is possibly the most interesting one to think about when you think about this as a child looking at adults. Because they're mad. They are mentally unwell people. They are adults who are not mentally well. The March Hare is clearly depressed. The Dormouse is a narcoleptic, and the Hatter has mercury poisoning. And you can sort of see, oh yeah, these are these three different illnesses that these have. And I think that's very deliberate, because Jonathan Miller's father was a psychiatrist. So he has a background, even though he is a medical doctor, he does also have resource to draw upon this world of health of the mind, and to bring forth these three mentally unwell individuals. And what's interesting about that is it's the only scene that seems, while everything else seems a little bit chaotic, there is a certain degree of discomfort in that scene. Because when you are a small child, children have to, and they don't get an option in this, they have to mirror the adults around them. This is how they regulate. This is how children regulate. I teach teenagers. Teenagers regulate like this too. If you are hysterical as a teacher, that class has gone to pot. Teenagers may not like to look to the adult in charge to help regulate them, but they still do it because it's something that we do as children. We look to the adults in the room to, how should I feel about this? If the adult is panicking, the child will panic. The mirror neurons do that. So for children, people who are not mentally well are really quite frightening. That's because they can't sync up with them. No matter how much they try, it's not possible to sync up with them. And, and I say this because I know this, having had grandparents who at different times were not necessarily well. Either through dementia or through bipolar. And that really affected how you related to them as a child. It made their company different to other adults. So it can be a little bit unsettling. So for Alice to turn up at this tea party with three people she doesn't know who are not quite there, there is that vaguely, people have also said, that it looks vaguely threatening. And it is, because for a child that can be a little bit disturbing. Children don't have the capacity to empathize. They don't have the capacity to understand what's happening in the way that an adult can. So as a result, that tea party does feel a little bit unsettling. And it's the only time I've ever seen the Tea Party depicted as unsettling. And part of the unsettlingness is how still everything is. Because usually the Madhouse's Tea Party is very getting up and throwing things around and very big and boisterous. But when the whole thing is really quite settled, and it's talking to people who are not meeting your eye line, who are deliberately not looking at you, and who are talking strangely, much more strangely than anyone else in Wonderland, yeah, it's unsettling. The ending of the film obviously is Alice wakes up, but the other thing that is really wonderful in this is the music. The music is it manages to do quite a lot of things. Until we get to Wonderland, we have straight, more or less classic, or art music. I don't want to say classical, because classical is a very specific thing. Just art music, regular sort of film soundtrack, an oboe, or is it a clarinet? Clarinet, I think. Soundtrack. Once we enter Wonderland, when we see the White Rabbit for the first time, then we get a Indian soundtrack. Ravi Shankar did the musical arrangements for this. We get this wonderful Indian soundtrack in Wonderland. It's not constant. The other sound of Wonderland is actually hymns, big, huge Victorian hymns. And the combination of these two things, big Victorian hymns and essentially Indian classical instruments, gives it quite a psychedelic feel, which is very deliberate. Obviously, Alice in Wonderland is one of those texts that's massively picked up by the psychedelic movement. It's like, it looks like acid. Yeah, of course, psychedelics. And it seems very strange to call a black and white film a psychedelic film, but it is very much a psychedelic film. I mean, when you think of psychedelic and Alice in Wonderland, the first thing you think of is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, which is a fabulous song. But this one is also psychedelic. There's no attempt to make it read logically, which is wonderful about it. An attempt to make Alice in Wonderland read logically, to give it a narrative, to give even Alice a narrative arc, is just futile and actually breaks what makes that work nicely. What makes it work nicely is the dream quality. So in order to maintain the dream quality, the change of perspective, the change of size, there's a wonderful shot with a gate, and there's clearly a mirror been placed into the gate so that when Alice walks one way, she also walks the other way out of shot, which is just it's a beautiful shot. There's also a swinging camera in the court scene, because the Hatter runs back and forward after he's been called. He goes forward and then he goes back, and then you have the camera swings, that the camera swinging to reflect the Hatter moving backwards and forwards was actually suggested by Peter Cook, and they slung it up on a sling and did that. And it made me think very much of some of the shots in Napoleon, the 1927 silent epic, which I will probably bring at some point, but it's very, very long. Which has a swinging camera, except the difference being that in 1966 that camera's mechanized, and in 1927 that thing's hand cranked, which makes it massively impressive. This is when you get most of the Peter Sellers in the court scene, and he's just fabulous as the King of Hearts. I think most of what had been the Queen of Hearts lines are given to the King precisely because, well, you've got Peter Sellers. You're going to use him. Peter Sellers is seriously one of the great cinematic comedians. He's one of the great comedians. Hero to most of the comedians that came after him. So to underuse him would be criminal. But he makes this wonderful daft king come judge. And at one point he attempts to console the Hatter for you're very nervous. You're very nervous. Just tell your evidence and or I'll have you executed. I can do that. I have the power. It's just a wonderful line. Wonderful, wonderful line reading. It's not just the line, it's the line reading. It's the way he says, I have the power. So there are so many reasons to watch this. There are just so many reasons to watch this. You want to watch it for Peter Sellers. You should watch it for Peter Cook. You should watch it for just the beauty of the images, because they are extremely beautiful. You should watch it for Leo McKern. You should watch it for Sir John Gielgud, who has that most glorious voice, dancing at the sea on the seashore. It's a beautiful sequence. Leo McKern, who had been the year previously in the Beatles' Help, is wonderful. I mean, Leo McKern, the great Australian actor, you should want to see him. It is extremely beautiful. It is designed for adults. I think that you could enjoy it as a child, but I think you get a lot more out of it as an adult. It's not as whimsical. It is much more of a psychedelic dream meditation on childhood. So it is a really, really great film to watch. It's not long. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. I will link a link down below to it because I know there is one on YouTube. I'd really recommend that you watch it or seek it out. If you want to seek it out, I found that at least for my country, it's really hard to find a DVD under about $60. Check out eBay or something. I managed to find one, but there aren't that many around. It was restored and released, but it's still quite a rare piece to find. So if you can find one, or if you're interested, either check it out or have a look around for one. But I would highly recommend it, especially if you have never really been attracted to the big, huge colour animal head Alice, you might like this one because it is so very, very different. Anyway, that's it for me. I think Her Infernal Majesty will be next because that won't involve reading a book. That will involve watching a play. We really have got ourselves into a bit of a mess. Her Infernal Majesty will be next, and then the one after that will be a Buster Keaton one for Buster's birthday, which seems to have become a bit of a tradition. So that should give me enough time to get back reading books that I can bring. I think I have some more research to do, so I'm not actively writing. That's the problem. It's not a problem when I'm researching. It's a problem when I'm actively writing, because that's what I want to do. It's really not exactly always comfortable when you're having to write around a lot of other things. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I do very much recommend that you check that out. And good night. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.